So, it's absolutely pouring with rain at the game fair today. So what we've had to do is we've had to find places where we can go and do interviews in the dry. So I've managed to get hold of Tim Bonner. He's the director of the Countryside Alliance. Now, Tim, can you explain why the general licence for pigeon shooting was removed?
Well, I'd love to be able to explain, but I can't, because I can't explain how the Natural England Board made what was a really bizarre decision, as we all know. But we know the basic facts. There have been questions about how the general licences have been written, and especially about how the assessments have been done by Natural England for some time. It's been a bit of an open secret that they're not being properly administrated. When people with malicious intent moved to judicial review, a legal process to look at that, the advice that Natural England got was that they hadn't been doing the job they should have been done. And instead of negotiating or rectifying that, Natural England took this extraordinary decision at 36 hours notice to pull the whole lot, which we remain absolutely clear was wrong, and it won't be forgotten, and we will be asking the questions why. But as you know, in the meantime, we've done a lot of work with our colleagues in other shooting organisations to resolve the issue.
Yeah, we've got them back now, but the problem is we've got two licences now for pigeon shooting, the Natural England one and the Defra one. Now, which one do we use?
You can use either, technically. And we asked this question, it was on the first questions we asked. It is a very technical issue over protected areas, SPAs, and the Natural England licence does operate over SPAs, whereas the Defra one doesn't. So they've left it in place because for those few people who are managing pigeons and other corvids in pigeons in special protected areas, and corvids for protecting livestock, then you can use the Natural England licence. But for most of us, the reality is we're back to that Defra licence, which is almost exactly where we started. There's almost no difference at all. So for all the effort, the time, the column inches in the paper, all the money that we spent on lawyers, we are now where we started. It's been a complete and utter waste of time.
The pigeon and corvids, crows, pigeons and magpies, were on the list of birds that could be shot at any time, Schedule 2, Part 2. They were all removed and the general licence brought in. Is there any chance of putting it back on the Wildlife and Countryside Act?
Not only, I mean, the pigeon, we could have the pigeon on during the winter, well, during the non-breeding season as a quarry species. But I think there's a more important point here, Ian, and that is that we want to reset this whole debate as part of this discussion. Back in 2004, the history of this, the then Labour government made some really significant changes to the licences and started bringing in these gold plating, essentially, the licence. We look at our colleagues who we work with across Europe, in Sweden, in other countries, in France. They're not operating for 13-page licences with all this. They've got a simple, straightforward licence. If you need to control these things to prevent damage, to protect public health, for all the other reasons we know you can, they can do it. And so we're going back to Defra, and we're talking to them about the moment this went wrong in 2004, resetting this discussion, going back to the European legislation, going back to the original discussion, the 81 Wildlife and Countryside Act, and actually creating the simplest possible licence so all of us can use it in a practical way.
Well, I wish you luck on that. It's exactly what we want, because at the moment it's 9 pages long and nobody can understand it.
Yeah, no one can understand it, and we can all say, oh well, we'll just go and do it anyway, which we'll probably do. But the reality is, we all know that if someone is maliciously, and we've seen Natural England taken to court, if people want to take us to court, challenge us on the fact of whether we're protecting a crop when we're shooting at all this, there are weaknesses in that licence, and we're not. We would far rather there was much more clarity, less complication, and that these things just did the job they were supposed to do, rather than well, they're written mainly, I think, to cover the backsides of bureaucrats, and we don't need that.
Right, I'm going to change tack slightly now. Yesterday I came down here next door to the theatre to film Mr. Avery, but unfortunately Mr. Avery didn't turn up. Game Fair had asked him not to come because they were worried about over-enthusiastic shooters. Now, do you think he should have come or not?
No, absolutely not. I think inviting people like Mark Avery, Chris Packham, and most of all, there's a horrible man called Jay Tiernan, who's one of the nastiest animal rights extremists in the country, to come to the game fair is an act of idiocy. Absolutely clear on that. It was very, very foolish. In September, I'll be going to the Labour Party conference. Do you think they'll be inviting Boris Johnson along to give a speech? Of course they won't. Then I'll be going to the Conservative Party conference. Do you think they'll be asking Nigel Farage whether he'd like to have it, to put his line across? Of course they won't. This is our event. They'll give a platform to these people who only have one interest, and that interest is in damaging shooting and damaging our way of life. And the last thing we should be doing is inviting them along here. It's absolutely ridiculous. And for me, and for the game fair as well, this wasn't about whether people were going to shout at them and be nasty about them. It's just we're not going to give these people a platform. They lie. They produce propaganda. They will do anything they possibly can to damage us. So why on earth would we want to invite them here?
I'm not going to disagree with you, but the problem is they've got all the press, they've got all the publicity, and it now looks like they're being crowdfunded, that this Wild Justice organisation has got all the money as well. How do we fight it?
Well, I just think we've got to be, we've got to calm down a bit. All the press. I do more work on public opinion, more attitude than probably anyone else in rural organisations. We do focus groups. No one cares about shooting out there, apart from a small band of animal rights extremists who are politically motivated. We all know that. Avery calls grouse shooting is is done by Tory toffs. We all know that, and we know the language, know that why they're doing this. They care, and we care. No one else in the middle cares, and most of the stuff that we all get excited about is the only people who looks on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else are people who shoot and people who want to stop shooting. The vast majority of the public, they're not listening to either side. They're not particularly interested, and if we get our game right, if we're doing the things properly, if we're obeying the law, if we're not doing things that are environmentally damaging, if we've got high standards, and for instance, we've been very keen on the British Game Alliance and making sure the self-assurance programme for shoots through that, which is critically important. We get our game right, then the public have no problem with what we do, and we mustn't get ourselves into this rut that somehow that we're in a hole. Shooting's a growth industry. More and more people want to do it. There's a great positive story out there.
Brilliant. This is what I like to hear. Now, Countryside Alliance. Now, is there any chance that now we got Boris in and what they're calling a right-wing Tory government, do you think there's any chance of repealing the Hunting Act?
No. The politics is about maths. They will tell you the politics about policies or speeches or anything. Rubbish. It's about maths. The government currently has a majority of 2. And this government, it can barely pass a vote to tie its own shoelaces, let alone to do something controversial like that. So I'm afraid we have to be realistic about the politics of this. And I tell people, when Tony Blair was elected in 1997 with that manifesto commitment to have a free vote on banning hunting, he had a majority of 179. I mean, he could have abolished the monarchy and made everyone dye their hair pink. That's how politics works. So we're in this extraordinary situation at the moment. We've got a period of, first of all, until October the 31st, where the government's try and deliver Brexit, and the effect of Brexit, different Brexit outcomes on the countryside are absolutely enormous, and we all need to be focusing on that, frankly. And beyond that, can they go to the end of this Parliament with that tiny majority? Well, they might be able to, but they'll only be able to do it on the basis of compromise and on the basis of working with other people. And frankly, our issue, why it's critically important to us, and we will do everything to make sure that hunting continues and hunting remains on the political agenda. Realistically, on the list of anyone's priorities, it can't be anywhere near the top at the moment.
Well, as I had here, I had to ask the question.
Of course.
Right, Tim, thank you very much for speaking to us. Thank you for putting things a bit clearer. I feel a bit happier now. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Always get in and any time.